At long last, Metaphor ReFantazio is out. It is finally here, the newest JRPG from the team behind the modern Persona games. But this title has a fresh coat of fictional fantasy paint. It is great, at least from the 8 hours I've played so far. I imagine most people will be coming from either the Megami Tensei or Persona games, since clearly this game is made for them, which is another way to say it's for me. But I have no doubts this will also attract new players. Well, for both newcomers to JRPGs and fans of Megami Tensei and Persona, listen up, I have here 9 tips for playing Metaphor ReFantazio. Let's start with the first tip, which involves the auto-saving mechanic. Believe it or not, auto-saving is actually a rarity for the Megaten series. Heck, the only other game I remember with this function is Persona 3 Reload, which if you don't know at the time of writing is the second latest release in the series. Not even SMT5 Vengeance had it. But enough about that, let me just say I decidedly welcome this feature. The game auto-saves very often. It saves after certain events, or more notably, right before a boss encounter. So if you lose, the game will just put you right back at the boss door. This might ire some players, seeing as it means losing is less punishing overall, and taking risk is a tad safer. But that's a whole different discussion. What I want to mention here is that, well, you know how the game doesn't allow you to manually save just anywhere while in a dungeon? You have to either return to the entrance, or find a save room, or a cat. But you know what you could also use to save? Item pickups. Yes, be it from a treasure chest or a blue light, you pick up an item, the game will auto-save. As luck would have it, you pick up a lot of stuff in this game. And there are 2 ways you could use this to your advantage. One is to set mini checkpoints that you'll return to in case you die. And for those playing in higher difficulty settings, dying out of nowhere is actually pretty common. So this helps with that. The other use though is, well, just to close the game mid-dungeon, which is super convenient. Need to grab lunch but you're deep in enemy territory? Just grab an item off the floor, close the game, and once you come back, you'll be right where you were last time. And even better, if you reload this save, you haven't actually picked up the item yet. So if you want to use it again as a save point, go ahead. For number 2, let's look at Overworld combat. It is undoubtedly always better to go into fights with combat advantage. Hard to argue against free damage, first strike, and inflicting stun. Best way to get advantage is to sneak up on an enemy, but what if you're spotted? Well, advantage is not out of the way yet. You can still break the enemy's guard with repeated attacks, and there are a few things to keep in mind. First is locking on so that you can focus on your target, because they'll probably move around quite a bit. Locking on is also important because when and only when you're locked on, if you attack while you're out of range, your character will lunge forward, putting you right in the enemy's face before swinging with your sword. Of course, the enemy's not just gonna stand around while you wail on them. After some time, or if you land a few hits in, they will attack, and these attacks have armor. Hitting them will not interrupt their attack. So watch out, at least there's a visual and audio cue whenever an enemy attacks. And now this is where rolling comes in handy. Rolling has invincibility frames, so with the right timing you can avoid getting hit. Feel free to roll away too, because you can just lunge in again. For tip number 3, this one should be obvious. Knowledge is power. In fact, knowledge in this game and in the Megaten series in general is a polarizing factor. If you don't know what you're up against, you will probably die. But if you do, you have a much higher chance of winning. In a game where exploiting your enemy's weaknesses and mitigating your own is so important, knowing what you're up against really helps. When you encounter a new enemy, they'll be a complete mystery, but you only have to win one fight against them to unlock the info you need for the next time. So that's the tip here. You spot a threat that you've never seen before? Go in and take the risk to beat at least one of them, cause you'll probably find even more of them further in the game, so might as well. For bosses, basically the same, although I understand the appeal of beating a boss on your first try. If it isn't working out so great and you're basically dead anyway, why not try a magic attack you haven't tried before, just to gather a bit more information for next time. And to this point, make use of the informant NPCs. They sell info about dungeons that either help against the majority of threats or the boss itself. This will help you prepare even before tackling the dungeon for the first time. If you forget the info they gave you, you can simply recall them via the item menu. Forewarned is forearmed, as they say. At tip number 4, let's look at the party formation. I don't know about you, but I actually often forget this is even a mechanic in combat. And in case you also forgot, your party has a front and back row. characters in the front do more melee damage and those in the back take reduced damage overall. It's kinda taken from the Etrian Odyssey games, which is another hardest balls Atlus JRPG series. On the surface, this means that you'll want your fragile mages at the back and tanks up front. However, in Metaphor ReFantazio, formations are much more flexible. Everyone can be at the front or back. Plus, your party members can switch rows as they please before acting. So, if for some reason, let's say you want a character to switch to healing with items and using melee skills on the fly, well, there's no stopping you from moving them to the back row whenever they'll use items. Plus, since a character can get 2 actions per turn, imagine this. First action, front row, attack with sword for higher damage, and for their second action, go to the back row to heal and reduce incoming damage. Now that's best of both worlds right there. Some extra info as well, the game defaults to everyone in the front row, but there are 2 ways to change the starting formation. The first is by going to the party sub-menu. You'll see a small arrow on each party member's box. An arrow to the left means they're at the front, and if it's at the right, they're at the back row. You can switch their starting row with the shoulder buttons, or 1 and 3 for PC. And the second option is you can toggle the save formation option in the system settings. This makes it so that the formation you end in after battle will be kept. Before we move on to the next tip, if you're liking the video so far, consider leaving a like to help me out. Also, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell. I'll be making more videos about Metaphor ReFantazio and other Megaten games, so look out for those. But now let's move on to tip number 5, which is all about stun. This will be the most common ailment you'll be inflicting on your opponent, since you get it for free against all your enemies with combat advantage. Your opponent skipping a turn is always great. At that point, you then want to wail on the enemy to wipe them out unscathed. Thing is though, dealing damage to a stunned enemy has a chance to remove the stun. And for those times that you know you wouldn't be able to defeat everyone in just 1 turn, the opponent may get a few shots in if they recover from stun. So it would be better to focus on 1 enemy at a time, and then passing the turn when you don't have enough actions to kill another one. That way you get another whole turn without the enemy having a chance to retaliate. Also, the stun status is a mental ailment, so you can actually stack a physical status ailment on top of it, like poison, paralysis, or malady. I'm not sure if there are any skills that can inflict these without damaging the enemy, but fortunately, there are consumables that do just that, like the stunning arrow. So the turns you'd otherwise skip can be spent on trying to paralyze your enemy. Okay, number 6. We know that you have to do damage to win, right? You got your physical attacks, magic attacks, tied to strength and the magic stat respectively, and skills are tiered to have varying strengths. Higher tier magic will do more damage, you get the idea. You also have weapons, which mainly affect physical attacks, right? And that means you don't really need to upgrade the weapons of magic casters, right? Actually, no. Metaphor ReFantazio mixes this up because your weapons attack stats affect both your physical and magical damage, so you still need to upgrade your mage's stabs and maces. Switching archetypes will also likely change your character's weapon, and it'll actually automatically equip the strongest weapon in your inventory to auto-equip. But if you have nothing at all, you'll be left with an innocent weapon that has pathetic stats. You never know what combat situation you'll end up in a dungeon, so while in town, it's actually best to have spare weapons prepared, even if you won't be equipping them right away. This will also make experimentation on the fly a bit more tolerable, just in case you want to try out a new tactic or combo. Now, on to number 7. Within the prologue, you'll unlock the ability to inherit skills from other archetypes. It allows your otherwise specialized classes to have some flexibility. You can plop a healing or buffing skill to your warrior, or add an extra elemental magic to your mage's arsenal. At first though, it wasn't clear to me how you could make more use of this. What I did was just plop an extra skill on the archetype I'm currently using. 2 specifics that I found to be important are: 1. Inherited skills are unlocked on a per character basis, and 2. Every single archetype on each character can have a different set of inherited skills. You have to set them manually though. You do need a currency called mag to unlock skills to inherit, but since they're on a per character basis, you only have to buy the skill once. Let's say if you have Hulkenberg inherit first aid to her monk, it'll cost you 1,000 mag the first time around, but afterwards you can inherit first aid on her other archetypes free of charge. Again, you have to do this manually per archetype per character, but I believe it's worth it. It is a great way to give a character more options. Stroll is usually just a physical powerhouse, but with just a few mag, you can add a healing or provoke skill to his set. At number 8, making the use out of synthesis skills. You also unlock this during the prologue. These are powerful combination skills. 2 characters work together to unleash it. It takes 2 turn icons to use and sometimes even 3. This cost is indeed steep, but the press turn system can be manipulated to mitigate the cost. We already know that certain actions will only consume half a turn icon, such as passing turn or landing critical hits or hitting enemy weaknesses. Criticals and weakness hits are better because it uses up half of any whole icon you may have left, so hitting 3 weaknesses in a row will give you 3 half icons. Passing 3, on the other hand, will give 1.5 icons, which is not as good, and this is because synthesis skills will count half icons as 1. Let's see a couple of sample use cases. You can pass a turn, which consumes half an icon, and have the next character use a synthesis skill that would cost 2 icons. Since you have half an icon up, it'll only use 1.5. Another sample is hitting 2 weaknesses in a row, reducing your 2 whole icons into 2 half icons. Then your third character uses a synthesis skill, which will use those 2 half icons only, leaving you with 1 whole icon left. Finally, if you do decide to use whole icons for synthesis skills, the critical and weakness mechanic still applies. Hit a weakness with a synthesis skill that costs 2, and you'll be given 2 half icons. This alone gives great credence to using elemental synthesis magic. By the way, if you're unsure who's going to go first or next, well, the turn order is displayed right here besides your character's statistics. You'll need it to make the most out of your synthesis skills. Have fun! And finally, at number 9, well, this last tip might help a lot or not at all, but it could also be a lot of fun. Turning on the game's network functionality will enable the Traveler's Voices function, which allows you to see the decisions and statistics of other players. You can see what level they were when they cleared the dungeon you're in, plus the party members as well as the archetypes they had equipped. What's new to this game though is the fact that you can copy this party configurations by clicking on them. This will change your equipped archetype, weapons and armor, but not your inherited skills. The changes aren't fully displayed though, so it might be best to have a backup save of your original build to revert back to just in case. Anyways, from what I've seen, most people play on normal difficulty, and level ranges can vary quite a bit. If you're having a hard time, you could just copy the configuration of another player that cleared the dungeon at the same level as you. What could be fun though is trying out a build that someone else used on a lower difficulty level than you. Will their build be enough to overcome the higher difficulty you're in? Can you channel the same tactics they used? Man, this is a neat addition. I'm looking forward to it. I am having a lot of fun with the game, and I hope you are too. Tell me what you think of the game so far in the comments. Again, I'm only around 8 hours in, and there's no doubt more to discover. So let's dive in further and explore the game. But that's all for today, folks. Thanks for watching. Again, leave me a like, subscribe to the channel. I hope you all have a lovely day. See you next video.